Hey there! This is part 2 of a 2-part episode, so you should go ahead and watch the first part, or this one won't make a lot of sense. With that being said though, on with the show. Back at the Aether Hub, Chandra was moping. I mean, she came home for the first time in 12 years, she found her dead mother alive, she had an encounter with the man who had tried to murder her, and then her home plane spiraled into a civil war, and dang it, she just wanted a hug from her mom, who is now too busy being Renegade Prime to do much else. Moping was understandable. Gideon talked to her to try and cheer her up, and they spent some time reminiscing on the events of the partially retconned novel, The Purifying Fire. To help clarify the retcons, I suppose? It's not important, but if you care, here are some more details. Anyway, Chandra and Gideon hugged it out just as Nissa came in. Chandra freaked out, of course, cause you better believe she was crushing on both of them like the hot pansexual mess of sentient napalm she was. Just then, the three heard a booming voice from outside yelling Chandra's name. It was the Chief of Compliance, Baral. You see, Tezzeret and Dovin Bond had intentions of taking back the Aether Hub, but the biggest obstacle standing in their way was the Gatewatch. So every planeswalker they could lure away from the hub would make the recapturing that much easier. Dovin hypothesized that Chandra would be the easiest, as easily provoked as she was, and Tezzeret had just the idea about how to get under Chandra's skin. Baral started taunting Chandra about the events that took place long ago, about how much her parents had suffered because of her. Well, it didn't take long for Chandra to explode, and she fled the Aether Hub to go after Baral, just as Consulate Gearhulk started advancing against the Renegade forces. Gideon, as much as he wanted to help Chandra, stayed behind to command the Renegade troops, while Nissa followed Chandra away. Baral, running on foot while Dovin watched from an aircraft overhead, made his way to a location Dovin had proposed, a series of alleyways with nothing flammable in sight. And, being a master of counter magic, it would be easy for Baral to douse any flames sent directly at him. But although the fight began in Baral's favor once Chandra had caught up to him, he hadn't anticipated Nissa cutting off his path with a mass of viney plants. After a brief bout of hand-to-hand combat, Baral was lifted out by a consulate craft, as Chandra, who had dislocated her shoulder in the brawl, was tended to by Nissa. Baral wanted to call in a Gearhulk just to finish the planeswalkers off, but Dovin insisted that they weren't authorized to do that. As badly as Baral wanted Chandra dead, they were only meant to be a diversion, and the attack on the hub needed all the firepower they had. As Chandra and Nissa chased Baral's craft down, turreted skyships and thopters, which are basically unmanned drones, started swarming the Aether Hub. Baral landed on a rooftop, and Nissa lifted herself and Chandra to meet him. But Chandra's fire still wasn't doing any good, and now that Nissa was right in front of Baral and unable to catch him off guard, he cancelled her abilities too. So, Nissa decided to use her sword for, the first time ever, but she was quickly taken out by a nearby turret. Baral was now in the perfect position to finally eliminate Chandra, but luckily, Ovia Pashiri intervened out of nowhere, as she and Ajani were ushering renegades fleeing the hub onto the heart of Kirin. After being struck by one of Mrs. Pashiri's automatons, Baral commanded the turrets to focus on her, and, despite Ajani's best efforts, she was struck. Baral forced Chandra to watch it happen, taunting her all the while. He had killed her father, imprisoned her mother, burned down a village of innocents, all to torment the monster that he believed Chandra was. And now Chandra's friends were losing a battle that she could have helped win. Baral had taken so much from Chandra, and now he would kill her, and there was nothing she could do about it. But in fact, there was. Chandra was a very powerful mage. Although she was sloppy with her pyromancy, and her emotions often got the best of her, it would ultimately be so easy for her to destroy everything. Baral, the ships, the Gearhulks, the Consulate, Tezzeret, all of Girapur. In her desperation, she was ready to go full nuclear, even if it killed her. Thankfully, Nissa had recovered enough by this point to talk Chandra down, calming the uncontrollably rising power within her. While Baral was distracted watching that display, Nissa reconstituted one of her elementals and knocked Baral out in one clean blow. When Baral came to his senses, it was Dovin Bond he found standing over him. Dovin had been watching and listening from his position in that consulate aircraft of his the entire time. Baral had said in his official report 12 years ago that Chandra and her parents were killed in an arson caused by Chandra herself. But in his taunts, Baral had admitted to killing Kirin himself, imprisoning Pia and Chandra, attempting to execute Chandra, and turning said execution into a sort of arena spectacle. Sure, Chandra's parents were ether smugglers, and Chandra had burned down a foundry around the time she first discovered her powers, but the Nalars were still citizens of Ghirapur, and neither of those crimes were capital offenses. Dovin Baan may have been working for Tezzeret, but he still cared first and foremost about the well-being of Ghirapur's citizens. He had Baral arrested for murder, attempted murder, and multiple counts of falsifying public record with the intent of obscuring his crimes. Baral still insisted that Chandra and Nissa be hunted down, but they had successfully retaken the Aether Hub, which was their primary objective. Mission complete. And so, the consulate took back the hub, and Baral was taken out in spectacularly anticlimactic and yet wonderfully karmic fashion. Despite being quite beat up, Chandra, Nissa, Gideon, Mrs. Bashiri, Ajani, Pia, Gonti, everyone important who had been at the hub had survived the attack. So what now? Well, during all of this, Jace had been working with a 15-year-old skyship raider named Kari Zev, doing pirate stuff, like stealing ether shipments from consulate ships. Jace doing pirate stuff is probably a one-off sort of thing though. I wouldn't expect that to happen again. Anyway, even though the hub was lost, the Renegades still had the Heart of Kiran. They could proceed with their original plan of flying it against the Spire, but there was a big obstacle standing, flying in their way. The consulate had many skyships of their own, of course, but the biggest, their flagship, was called the Sky Sovereign. With Sky Sovereign flying in the way, there would be no getting the Heart of Kiran to the Spire. So what they needed was a diversion. Naturally, Jace had a plan. Kari Zev commanded one ship, the Dragon's Smile, but that alone wouldn't be enough to attract Sky Sovereign's attention, especially when the flagship was surrounded by a fleet of smaller ships as a sort of blockade. So, Kari would pilot the Dragon's Smile through the consulate's skyship blockade that surrounded Sky Sovereign, then disrupt the consulate's formation by causing as much general chaos as possible. In said chaos, Jace would create an enormous fleet of illusory ships, with hope of tricking Sky Sovereign to move to engage. That would leave an opening for the Heart of Kiran to slip past. Well, said plan was enacted, and everything was going well, but as Sky Sovereign approached the illusory fleet, the Heart of Kiran remained grounded. And as Sky Sovereign approached, Kari was scared of her ship being destroyed. But luckily, she saw the perfect opportunity to simply take Sky Sovereign out altogether. She signaled to Jace telepathically, telling him to jettison the ether cargo of the Dragon's Smile. Once he had done so, Kari flew to the deck of the ship with her flight pack, and then threw said pack at the cargo, causing it to explode in a cloud of ether. That lured a sky whale in from a nearby pod Kari had spotted. By the way, Kaladesh has sky whales that consume ether. Anyway, the massive creature burst right through Jace's illusions and directly into Sky Sovereign, which instantly capsized under the force. The whale was fine, but for Sky Sovereign, that was the end. The final phase of the Renegade's plan had 3 parts. After moving the Heart of Kiran past a now considerably thinned aerial blockade, a ground team would move to disable the turrets that were defending the Spire. That would allow a special thopter Rajmi and Sahili had built to fly in. Named the Hope of Ghirapur, it was a speedy flying machine that was outfitted with an etheric disruptor, basically an advanced EMP, except for ether. It would detonate and destroy the mechanisms of the Planar Bridge beyond repair. Meanwhile, someone would need to distract Tezzeret so that he couldn't just disable the Hope of Ghirapur personally, as he saw it fly past the turrets. Liliana would be that distraction. Nissa, meanwhile, would lead Pia, Ajani, and some others to the turrets by following the ether pipelines. Sahili, Gideon, and Chandra would remain in the Heart of Kiran and defend it from any attempts to take it down, and deploy the Hope of Ghirapur when the turrets were out of commission. Once in position, the Renegades on the ground released a horde of gremlins, tenacious scavengers with an insatiable appetite for ether. The gremlins made short work of the turrets, turning them into quite the feast, and clearing the way for the Hope of Ghirapur. But there was a problem. While the planeswalkers on the deck of the Heart of Kiran were fending off incoming consulate thopters, something made quite the kaboom down in the hold below them. Chandra went down, only to find that Dovin Baan had cut a hole in the side of the ship and was examining the Hope of Ghirapur. With a quick and precise motion, Dovin opened the thopter, then removed and crushed the etheric disruptor, the linchpin of the device. Chandra, enraged, fired blasts of flame at Dovin, but he simply planeswalked away, leaving nothing behind but a snarky comment. The hope of Ghirapur was now all but useless, and the heart of Kiran was fading fast. Turns out Dovin had also cut the fuel lines. But they wouldn't get another shot at this. Chandra made a quick decision, and climbed inside the now hollow hope of Ghirapur, ready to be the bomb herself. She would fly in and deploy the catastrophic spell that she was about to use on Baral before Nissa had stopped her. Gideon refused to let Chandra go, but she knew that this was their only chance. Everyone was counting on them. So Gideon made a quick decision as well. He wouldn't let Chandra go alone, so he would go with her. It would be dangerous, but with his invulnerability magic, hopefully Gideon could shield himself and Chandra while still letting Chandra deal the needed damage to the Planar Bridge. While all of this was happening, Liliana had easily made her way into the Spire. She raised zombies from the fallen around her, but restrained herself from killing the enforcers who tried to stop her. That would appease Gideon, but it left her with far fewer corpses to work with. When she finally confronted Tezzeret, he actually wasn't hostile at first, thinking that perhaps Bolas had sent Liliana to check in on him. It surprised Liliana to find out that he was working for Bolas, but Tezzeret had a debt to pay, thanks to his duel with Jace years ago. Through with the pleasantries, Liliana used the power of the Chain Veil to send a barrage of necrotizing energy at Tezzeret, and while he was able to block most of it, it still left him weak enough for Liliana's few zombies to pin him to the floor. With her boot at his throat, Liliana demanded to know where Bolas was, and Tezzeret responded with a name. Not of a place, but of a demon. Razaketh, Liliana's third demon, which meant that Bolas was on the plane of Amonkhet. Satisfied with this answer, Liliana was about to finish Tezzeret off when she saw the incoming hope of Ghirapur. She quickly moved to hide behind a sturdy wall just before the Thopter impacted with a massive inferno. When the dust cleared, all that was left was Liliana, Gideon, Chandra, the ruins of the workshop, and the wreckage of the Planar Bridge. Gideon and Chandra had made it out alive. Liliana had too, despite some minor wounds and some bleeding from use of the Chain Veil. Tezzeret was gone, however, and although the Planar Bridge was destroyed, that wasn't the whole story. Unbeknownst to the Gatewatch, Tezzeret had already taken the modular core of the bridge and grafted it into his own artificial body, effectively becoming the bridge in his own right. Tezzeret was still out there, and now he was more dangerous than ever. While the destruction of the bridge didn't end the revolution outright, with Baral under arrest and Dovin and Tezzeret seemingly both vanished, it wasn't long before the tide turned. A few weeks later, the consulate was under new leadership, and in new hands. Among these hands was Pia Nalar, the new Consul of Allocation. One of the first things done by this new consulate was the conduction of an investigation into Baral and Dund Prison, which uncovered a vast network of unscrupulous activities. Legislative reform was quickly written, passed, and set into motion. Hundreds of prisoners were released, most of whom were renegades or mages who had disappeared long ago. Inspectors like Baral were reassigned to new stations, and some of them were arrested for their past actions. Mage hunts and public executions were made illegal. And that was only the start. The new consulate had a lot to do to make things right again. It wasn't just the consulate who had a lot to do, though. For one, Yeheni finally got to throw their penultimate party. As a parting gift, Yeheni gave Nissa a necklace, a traditional gift to give to someone who's missing home. In return, Nissa told Yeheni a secret. All about the multiple planes, about all that was really out there. Now at peace with this information, and the new Ghirapur their loved ones had to look forward to, Yeheni passed, dissipating into the ether from which they had come. Chandra, meanwhile, was taught to meditate by Nissa, and finally got to spend some time with her new consul mom, the two of them working together on a memorial to Kiran that Pia had begun many years ago. Chandra, amidst trying to describe planeswalking to her mom, professed her intentions to stay on Kaladesh, but Pia now knew that that wasn't the life that Chandra was destined to live. As much as Pia missed Chandra, she couldn't keep her plane bound, and even if she could, she wouldn't be able to bear Chandra having to leave again, when one day she would inevitably have to. After all, Chandra had a duty to attend to. That duty was one that each member of the Gatewatch shared, to stop whatever Bolas was planning. That would involve going to Amonkhet, where, according to Tezzeret, Bolas was hiding out. Ajani and Saheeli were both invited to join the Gatewatch, and while Saheeli declined, saying that she was needed on Kaladesh, Ajani accepted. Despite this, Ajani refused to go with the rest of the Gatewatch to Amonkhet, which, according to Liliana, was a plane that was actually created by Bolas himself. Jace and Liliana had both dealt with Bolas in the past, but Ajani had actually fought him. He won too, but those were very unique circumstances. Bolas was absurdly powerful, and they couldn't just waltz into Bolas's lair and expect to defeat him. What Ajani wanted to do was gather allies, maybe do some reconnaissance on Amonkhet, but Gideon insisted that this was their best chance to take Bolas by surprise. Chandra, Jace, and Liliana all agreed, and Nissa trusted their judgment. Liliana, of course, had a secret extra motivation in the form of Razaketh. So, Ajani would gather allies while the rest went to Amonkhet. Whatever happened, they would rendezvous on Dominaria. And so the Gatewatch left Kaladesh and Girapur to rebuild, and headed for the sandy dunes and double suns of Amonkhet. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like and subscribe to my channel if you aren't already. I'd also really appreciate it if you left a comment letting me know what you thought, and if you'd share this video or any other video in the series with someone who might be interested in magic lore. I'd like to get some more eyes on this series, but I don't really think I can do that without your guys' help. I actually have the next video just about done, but I'm having a few audio problems. I'll try not to keep you waiting too long though. As always, you can find the official stories these videos are based on at mtgstory.com. Thanks again, and see you next time.